Hi everyone. I wanted to make a couple development logs related to Color Jumper because I feel that it's an important way of kind of offering a post-mortem to the game, and I wanted to talk about some of the interesting parts of the game that I felt were kind of influential to the game as a whole. The first one I wanted to talk about was actually inspired by a recent video by the Game Dev Underground YouTube channel, who talked about hidden tutorials or invisible tutorials in games. And he went through one of his games and he talked about the importance of basically introducing the player to all sorts of mechanics and ideas without just pasting a bunch of text on the screen and expecting the player to just understand all of it. And I think that having a tutorial that just pastes everything out there and just expects you to go from there is kind of demeaning to the player overall. Like, I think that part of the joys of playing a game is learning how that game functions. And if you can just go and read a manual for all that, and I think that that kind of just diminishes the enjoyment of the game as a whole. So one of my things with Color Jumper, I'm going to switch over to Color Jumper real quick here. One of my things with Color Jumper is I wanted the game to be as text-free as possible. And there's a couple reasons for that. The first reason is that if I wanted to translate the game, then I would have to translate less text. And that is an important one just from a cost perspective more than anything else. The other thing is that the less text that's on the screen, the more accessible it is to anybody in the world. And I think that that's incredibly valuable for a game like this. So yes, there is a lot of text on this screen, but for the most part, the game itself is text-free aside from this tutorial up here. Now, the controls here are do have text in them, but if I wanted to, I could replace these with animations or little iconographies, which I might do in the future, actually, because I think that that will help people understand the game better, just in general. So this first level is designed to basically teach the player how to jump and just get familiar with how to move and just understand how the game works in general. You'll notice there's no way for the player to die on this level. There's no time limit or anything like that. So you have as much time as you want to get familiar with the controls and understand how jumping works, both from an airborne perspective, or understand how movement works from both an airborne perspective and for on the ground. And the next level kind of just reinforces that. There is black blocks in this one, the death blocks, and that's something that I did want to introduce very early on in this game because it is something that's very important throughout the game to understand what blocks are bad and which ones are good. I think that I'm able to get away with that in this game because the respawn is so quick, so death isn't really punished the same way as it is in many other games. So this is another level to teach the player basically how to move in midair and how that differs from moving on the ground. You notice that you have a lot more inertia in midair. You can't turn as quickly as you can on the ground. And this was important because I wanted to give the player a little bit of a sense of danger here and kind of understanding that, yes, the black blocks are bad, but they're easy to navigate in this level. And this level also doubles as a tutorial for the wall jumping mechanic as well. Now, not everybody knows what wall jumping is, so I had to try to figure out a way to do this where you basically just have to kind of run up against a wall, and if you don't know what to do, you probably just start kind of mashing buttons, and eventually you'll notice that you can like jump off of walls and do stuff here. Now, I think the sense of discovery is important in these games where a lot of players, if they're playing a game like this, probably already understand how that mechanic works, how the wall jump mechanic works. But it's important to not just assume it. Like, I could have put black blocks all the way up this and made this a lot more treacherous, but I wanted to keep these first levels simple and friendly. And that's what I did here. So the second level, or the third level here, is called the twist, which is a double entendre on both the player being able to twist around, and it's the twist or the main mechanic of this game. Now, the way that my player is positioned here is very, very intentional. When you start, yellow is up top, but to activate that block, yellow needs to be on the bottom. So if you're a player that doesn't exactly know what you're doing here, you'll just try to jump, and you'll notice that you fall through. But you'll also notice that you stop your horizontal momentum as well, meaning that the block turned solid, but not in the way that you want. I also have a black block over here so you can't get up, but I have it open over here so you can climb up and try again. And then, the second or third time you try this, you'll probably understand that, yeah, I need yellow on the bottom, and then that block turns solid. Moving on to this one, I kind of teach the inverse of that mechanic, where you sometimes need to fall through platforms to be able to progress. And right here, you'll also notice that I set it up so if you just hit the button once, you're kind of set up for the rest of the level. And setting up the player like that is actually very important in these early levels for me, because I wanted to make sure that things moved fluidly. I wanted this game to feel very fluid, very parkour-like, which is why I named this level Parkour. And this is another level where everything's set up for you already. If you fall down, you're already on this platform, and if you jump, you're already on that platform, and you can kind of just go through the whole level without having to think about it. And I think that that's incredibly valuable for at least the first couple levels in this game, because I wanted to make sure that the player never really felt challenged in the way of having to figure out all of the mechanics at the same time. Where everything's kind of laid out for you right away, and then you can just move on from there and better your skills as you move forward in the game. So there's that, and then we're finally teaching double flipping right here in this level. And having those level titles give little context clues to the type of level that you're going to be experiencing, I feel is also very important. So this one teaches you that you have to double flip to get up. And this is something that a lot of people actually struggled with just from a mechanicals perspective, where you have to change directions, you have to tap the button twice. There's a lot that you have to do in this, but it's such an important mechanic that I wanted to make sure that there was an entire level dedicated to it. Another thing that I did in this is whenever I have two green blocks next to each other like this, I wanted to make it pretty clear that that's what you needed to do in this situation. There's a couple little tropes that I tried to add in this game that kind of do the similar things, but the green blocks is really the most prominent one, where if you see two green blocks next to each other, you probably need to climb up it like that. Now, this level is called Wall Hugger for a very important reason, because if you touch the walls but don't push against them, you fall quickly. But if you do fall, or if you do push against the wall, you fall slower. And I think that it's an important mechanic to learn as soon as possible, because this game is all about understanding your environment and and not just jumping blindly into certain things. And another thing that I did in this level, and this is actually something that took a lot of revisions, is this little lip right here for the gray block on the left. This used to be a lot harder jump. You actually had to kind of weave your way down in, but that was really too difficult for an early level like this. So I changed it so this block, or this lip, is a lot easier to hit. And you'll also notice that that black block down there is a bit of a trap. It's encouraging you to do this wall slide to see what's coming ahead of you instead of just falling straight down and probably dying. So again, I feel like being able to justify these little traps is because the respawn is so quick in this game, and it's easy to justify having a little trap like that, because then the player dies, they learn, and then they understand that they need to push against that wall to fall slower. This level is another pretty important mechanic, where jumping off of the left side of a block and then the top. And what I wanted to do is express that in a way that you can also do that with colors. Because you can't wall jump over to that platform. You just can't reach. And in earlier designs, people were actually doing that. They were just wall jumping over and bypassing the tutorial I was trying to do. But in this case, I wanted to teach that you jump on the left and then jump on the top, and then you can jump up from there. So I tried to teach it here with just a gray block, so any color works, and then here with this block, just to show that that's how that works, and then you have that. Now, this little black block right here is actually also very intentional. It's not a hard obstacle, but it is an obstacle to raise tensions, because this level is not exactly easy to newer players, so they can struggle all the way up here, and then they have this one final hurdle to overcome, and it's not difficult, but it's something that just stresses you out, and it's very relieving when you get to the other side and you can go to the exit. And that's something that I learned from watching a lot of Super Meat Boy levels, where they have a very, very difficult level, but as the end approaches, the end of the level approaches, the challenges actually get a lot easier. But if you fail at those challenges near the end, it's completely your fault, and all you do is blame yourself. And it's a very, very good frustration moment, I guess. So this level is mostly just teaching that there's a lot of verticality in this game as well, and it's also teaching that you have to kind of prepare your jumps a little bit, both on the left and the right side. So on the left side, yellow has to be facing down, but on the right side, green has to be facing up. And it depends on which route you take, but it's important that the player understands that they have to kind of plan their rotations ahead of time before they just kind of just jump blindly into it and hope for the best. And then this is kind of the end of the tutorial for movement, and you'll notice right here that everything is lined up properly for the player. Except for this blue platform up here. And this blue platform is very, very intentionally placed because it teaches you that you're going to need to double rotate once in a while. And it's actually really fun to watch players play through this level for the first time because they get it almost all the time. They go up here and then at the last second they flip over and they land on that platform. And it actually makes me really proud that they not only understand the basic movement mechanics, but they're also understanding how to kind of prepare your player for the next section of the game. And the rest of this is pretty straightforward overall. And then this fall right here, you can just fall right through, and that was kind of accidental. But again, it's one of those things that kind of stresses the player out because it's near the end of the level. It's not exactly a hard jump, but it's something that takes a little bit more mental effort than they probably were expecting at the time. Same with this right here. Like all you have to do is just not push any buttons, and then you can fall to the bottom. But it's very easy to kind of overcorrect and freak out and then die. So I think that this level is kind of a good end of the teaching for movement mechanics. And what I wanted to do after this is I introduce enemies, which is also an important part of this game. Before that, I have another kind of final tutorial level teaching about vertical jump heights. I was having problems explaining that there's 3 different heights of the jump. There's the very short, the medium, and then the tall. One of the problems I was having was that there's just no easy way to teach it. So in this level, all you have to do is just jump the right height and you can make it through just fine. Now, I never really put any situations in the game where you need the very short jump because it is hard to do, but there are times where it actually benefits the player, like from a time perspective, to do a very short jump. So I have it in the game just as a precaution more than anything else. And more movement tech is always good too. Okay, so this is actually one of my favorite levels in the game because it teaches a lot of different things, and it's also one of the first real puzzles that that people kind of encounter. A lot of people don't fully understand how to get through here. They kind of just try to jump across or figure out how exactly it works, and you can do that. It's not easy, but you can. The solution for the puzzle, though, is to move like that, and I think that that's such an counterintuitive movement that I love it so much because you have to both fall through a platform and then use it as a platform. And then when you get to this side, you'll notice the enemy and the yellow block below it, and you already have everything set up, so all you really have to do is fall. And I wanted the first enemy to be easy like that, to not be a super big challenge, because that's not the point of this level. The point of this level is to teach. So I have a really cool puzzle and that little first enemy, and then you can move on. And this level is just kind of reinforcing the same thing as the last one. And then this level is also kind of reinforcing that, and then you can hit enemies on the side. It just depends on the color. And then this one is teaching that you can use that bounce to move forward. Another interesting thing on this level is a lot of people kind of do this for the first one and then kind of do this for the second one, and they really, oh no, and they have to keep moving So another thing that I wanted to teach early on is that time and movement and everything is very important to keep moving and always be moving and always be active. And it's kind of just reiterating all of these different ideas and moving forward from there. Later on in the game, I introduced turrets, and again, you'll notice that this is that this is a safe spot up here, so you can sit here and watch the turrets and kind of understand how they move. You'll also notice that the turrets rotate, and every time that they're in a diamond shape, they'll fire. So you'll have time to understand how all that works. There's no varying movement or anything like that. So you'll have time to figure it out. And in the next level, I take the moment to show that these solid platforms block it, and then opaque platforms, or not opaque, transparent platforms let the bullets through. And this is something that I wanted very, very much to show, because this is an important thing later on in the game when you need to block bullets. So you have this very, very long runway that you need to go through, so it's very obvious that these are blocked, because otherwise you would not be able to live in that area. You have to watch them get blocked at least once. Later on, I introduce beams, and again, this is mostly a safe space. You'll see that the tiles are shooting up and down, and you'll also see the particles inside those beams are also moving up and down respective to the beam itself. Now, you'll also notice that the black block is on the top up here, so it is not exactly completely safe, but again, since the respawn is so quick in this game, I can kind of get away with that, I feel, and move on from there. And then this is just a reinforcement that each color you need to match. It's not just blue. And yeah, so this is important to just kind of introduce ideas one at a time. And this is kind of using these beams for movement specifically rather than just as an obstacle. And then I introduce a sideways beam that you can push you sideways. It's the only way to get across. And then things just get more complicated from there on out. Yeah. And that's really it. Once you hit level 49, the tutorial of the game is pretty much over. I wanted the first half of the game to just kind of work on introducing mechanics and not necessarily, and there are hard levels in here, don't get me wrong, but I don't have like the incredibly hard levels that are later on in the game. Because once you get past 49, the only mechanic that's really introduced is the locks and keys, and that's pretty basic. Oops. And yeah, so the rest of the game is really the full game, and the first half of the game is the tutorial. But the first half of the game is just as difficult because you're kind of learning everything as you go. I wanted to ease the player in as much as possible because this is a very challenging game. And that's really all I had. I have to thank the Game Dev Underground YouTube channel again for introducing the concept of the having tutorials without text. So I was able to talk about this a little bit more. I really like that channel. He puts out a new video like every day. It's crazy. And that's pretty much all I have right now. I'm going to try to do a couple more of these. I have at least 2 or 3 more planned, just kind of talking about the mechanics of Color Jumper, how exactly I came about with the album idea, and oh, there's another one I wanted to do about getting your Steam keys and trying not to get scammed, because there's a lot of scammers out there. Anyway, that's all I have for now. I will see you guys again later. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good one. Bye.